Good afternoons to our dear audience. We invite you all to meet our beloved alumni and esteemed guest, Shrestha Saxena, for today's podcast with the centralized theme Journey from Sunbeam to Oxford, a quest of knowledge.
Today we are students first and moderators second. I am Anvesha Mishra along with my co-host and fellow classmate Divya Diviti. Right off the bat, a question comes to my mind. Divya, what do you think is the purpose of a GPS?
According to me, GPS is a device that helps us navigate our path, briefs us about hurdles, challenges, hardships, and tells what lies ahead of us.
Now that is exactly how I feel being a student of humanities, both of us working our way into political science and having our senior here, Shrestha Saxena, to guide us and navigate us through the path of our own success and acting as a GPS for us today.
Shrestha Saxena is a distinguished student and leader with a multifaceted background. She achieved academic excellence at Sunbeam Bhagwanpur and Miranda House, New Delhi University. After achieving the prestigious Commonwealth Scholarship, she will be pursuing her master's degree from one of the best universities, the Oxford. Beyond her studies, Shrestha has been a dynamic force in social outreach, leadership roles, and extracurricular activities.
Her remarkable achievements include founding impactful social initiatives, spearheading various leadership roles, and earning prestigious certificates in karate, Bharatanatyam, and Hindustani classical vocal. She has also made significant contributions through her work in embassies, universities, and public diplomacy forums. Shrestha's unwavering dedication to leadership, service, and personal growth is vividly reflected in her exceptional portfolio.
So, we are thrilled to have you here with us today and we welcome you. When I think of Sunbeam from a perspective of a student, I really feel grateful as this school has given so much to me and is still in the continuous form of giving me. So, from scoldings to love, from teachings to experiences, from friends and fans to guardian like teachers, the school has given me all. So, we would like to know what memories do you recollect when you go back in your memory lane as a student here?
Well, thank you for the wonderful introduction, and I'm delighted to be here as well. And I think you pretty much talked about the more fundamental things that our school has given us, I'm sure in your journey and in mine as well. The most memorable things that I recall always from school have to be all the extracurricular activities I participated in. So there's a running joke among my friends and classmates which we say that I probably spent more time outside of my classroom than inside, and it was never by choice. So, because I was participating in a lot of activities and events, I would have to run from one corner of the school to other for practice sessions, to get my script verified, to get everything finalized, and then also for the practice mock drills that we had of our events, just to ensure that everything is perfect to the best extent, right? So I think those would be my favorite memories, and any event that we did as a team with my friends, with my classmates, they have to be the favorite memory that I have from school. Because you know what, so when you work together, it always is a lot of struggle to manage all of our time schedules and our classes and our tests and everything together. But when everything that the team has worked towards comes together, and it comes together beautifully, the amount of satisfaction, the amount of happiness you get out of it, I think those would be my most favorite memories. And then I also have memories with my teachers of some interactions I had with them when I was actively seeking guidance about what I should do in my school, or how I should approach college applications, or even deciding streams for that matter. So I think while my entire life in school in Sunbeam has been memorable and has been very close to my heart, uh, the memories that I mentioned just now will have to be those that stand out the most.
This was really beautiful to hear because I can understand the curricular activities here are just so fun to indulge with actually.
Yeah, and in times when I would be having a difficulty managing my curriculars with extracurriculars, I would actively go to my teachers and ask them how is it that I can manage my studies, because I would also miss out on some lectures and all. And my teachers would always always be ready to help me, to schedule an extra lecture with me, to ask me to come up with my queries, and they would sort them out for me. So I'm really also very grateful to my teachers for instilling in me this very important skill of time management and of managing multiple things together. So a lot of credit of me learning these skills actually goes to my teachers.
As we looked into your background, we also got to know that you are NCC cadet. You have been an NCC cadet. You have been a participant in the Republic Day as well. And personally, I too have NCCA certificate, and I can completely relate, because when we have Independence Day and Republic Day and we do NCC drills in March, I have also been a part, and I have been through the phase of not being in the class, missing out on the lectures, and getting support from the teachers, and also having memories, creating memories with my fellow mates in the competitions and other activities.
That's so great to know.
It feels so informal to have you like just like one of us.
Yeah, I was a part of NCC for 7 years of my life. So I did my A certificate when I was in school in 2017-18, and then I also completed my BNC certificate in college. So NCC has been a big part of my life, and I don't, not many people believe it, but I did actually talk about NCC in my time there as a cadet in my college application to Oxford. So even Oxford knows that I've been an NCC cadet.
But we collectively congratulate you on this Oxford and exceptional achievement.
Thank
But
you so
this
much.
compels me to think that one infamous poem of Robert Frost, where he describes the beauty and the courage it is to take the road that is not taken. And how does it feel like to be the person who took the path less traveled?
Oh my god, that's such a beautiful question, and the way you put it with Robert Frost.
Philosophy.
Yeah, no, that poem is beautiful, and I do remember having quoted those specific lines in so many of my comparing scripts. I took the road less traveled by, so that brought back a memory for me. So as a humanities student, as both of you are as well, so I'm sure you'd relate. We are always aware of the fact centrally that our path in the field is not going to be very straightforward, and it's not going to be short, because we are not going to get a lot of job opportunities as soon as we complete our graduation. We might have to gain a few years of work experience, or do our masters and study further in order to be worthy of the opportunities and the jobs that we are targeting, because again, the jobs that we get in humanities are very high profile, but then you need to work on yourself along with your studies to ensure that you are able to make it up to that level, right? So I always had this thought, I had accepted it pretty much, and I also realized the privilege I had when my parents readily agreed to me choosing humanities as a stream. And I do also remember the sighs and the sympathy I got from some of my relatives and some people around me when they would hear that I chose humanities, right? So I was very much aware of all that was happening, and the expectation that was there was pretty much what I had from myself. So I was always self-propelled in that sense. So I always knew that I want to, because I've chosen this stream, the journey might not be that easy, but I am committed to ensuring that I choose the best courses, that I make my subject important for me, and that I choose universities that are going to give me that experience and that exposure. So since school itself, so when I was looking for my undergrad colleges, even then I remember starting my research from universities all around the world. So when I prepared that list of which universities are the best in political science, I wrote universities from every place of the world, alright? So it wasn't just India, it wasn't just US, it wasn't just UK, it was a very haphazard, very mix of, a mixture of a lot of things kind of a list, but I did start from there. And when I was in college, this resolve of wanting to study in UK and finding the fact that the teachers in the department that I chose for Oxford, their work and their research area has been very much closely aligned to what I am interested in and what I want to do. And then I'm also fortunate in my journey with the fact that I met a few people in college, in my life otherwise as well, who were very supportive since the beginning. So the thought of me making it to Oxford actually crossed my mind for the first time in a very candid conversation that a pass out from my college was having with her friend, in which she suddenly turned to me and she said, you know what, Shrestha, if you do an application where you might even make it to Oxford. So that is when I thought, okay, probably I can even, consider myself being a student there. It just not is a it's not too far a dream, to say that. So that is how everything worked out, and I'm grateful to say the least that, because this was new to me. This was I would be the first person from my entire family to even step out of the country, let alone study abroad. So this is going to be a completely new experience, but I feel grateful and I feel fortunate enough to have gotten the opportunities and to have had everything play out in a way that led to this, successful thing, and led to me getting admitted there. And I hope that I make out the most of my time there for my parents, for my friends, and for people who have supported me, as well as for my country.
Surrounded by people who support you actually makes a lot of difference when you are taking a big step that has to decide your future as well. So it actually means a lot.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, all the universities and the preference list you were just making to
Yeah.
find the best college and best course. There is this one thing that I am also willing to go to DU, but there is this problem that how can I just fix myself on the higher preference for either the right college or the right course. So can you just about it how you decided which college is best for which course?
This is a very relevant question, and I'm glad you asked it, because a lot of people who are looking to apply to these universities go through this dilemma. I was there as well, and my seniors from school, from Sunbeam, did actually help me figure this out. So when I asked them the same question, exact same words, what do you think I should prefer, the college or my course? And the answer almost 99% of the times from everybody was that you should prefer your course at all times, because you need to be interested in the course and the thing that you're doing before you can actually make use of the brand you are studying at, or you can make use of the brand value. So it is most important, in my view as well, that you ensure that you are studying and you are doing things that are important to you and that you're actually interested in, because only that is going to take you far. Otherwise, it might just be a constant struggle of you telling yourself that you need to adapt to this lifestyle, you need to adapt to this place in order to ensure that you can reap out the benefits of the struggle that you're going through right now 3 or 4 years later. That is not how we should view life. When I was in 11th and 12th, because I had my time as an NCC cadet and I had so closely watched the defense forces, so I was very much fascinated by defense services, and I did for a moment consider choosing PMC as a stream, because that is what is needed for defense services. If you are applying for technical batches, I'm sure you know, because you're an NCC cadet, right? So I did face a dilemma during the start of class 11th, and I did even go to a teacher in school, a PMC teacher in school, when we had already given our half yearly, that, sir, I'm considering changing my stream to PMC. That is how much serious I was about it. That is how serious my confusion was at the time. So I did go to them and I asked them, what do you think I should do? Do you think I would be able to make it if I choose PMC? But then if I chose PMC, I knew this, that I am choosing humanities because I like those subjects. I'd be choosing PMC because I am looking at the job I'll get after I choose this stream, and then once I do my graduation, the job I'll land, which is also not very much, given. It's not, nobody is going to assure me that you're going to get that job, right, after those 5 years of struggle. So but yes, I was confused then, and I went to a teacher, and then the teacher told me that it is a little difficult thing. I just want to give you a glimpse into how supportive my teachers have been all my life. So the teacher said, it is difficult to now be able to accustom yourself to the PMC syllabus and how you're supposed to study, but for you it won't be. And so that helped me clarify a lot of things, because earlier I was also confused because of the fact that now already time has passed, so I might not be able to shift, or if I shift my stream, I will not be able to do well in it because I've already missed 6 months worth of studies and 6 months worth of preparation. So I'm already behind my classmates. The first thing that you can do is to know what is your calling, which is the course and why is it that you want to study it. So I was always interested in international relations, and for international relations, political science was the path towards it in my idea and in my plan. So I had that clear in my mind, but I did also consider other courses while I was applying for political science undergrad in colleges. So that confusion is very relevant, and like I said, the first step would be to ensure that you know why is it that you're choosing a subject and which subject it is that you find most drawn towards. The second thing that could help you is probably to take advice from your seniors, because especially those people who have been in those colleges and have experienced teaching there and have experienced what sort of extracurricular activities and kind of exposure you get in that college, right? Because that is all of that makes your college experience. So talking to your seniors could help as well. You can even ask your teachers for advice, and that might help you clear a lot of things out for you. So yes, that confusion is going to be there for a little while, but just keep at it. Do not let it burn you out. Do not let it befuddle you. Try to, go through it with help from your seniors, from your teachers, and people from who are around you. And then the most important thing is that you ensure that you know that the subject you are choosing, the course you are choosing is your thing. You are choosing it because you want to.
So fortunate that we have you here as a senior.
I'm glad it helps. And if you are very resolute towards what you want to study, it also helps you later. Because a lot of times there's going to be there's going to be experiences in your life when everything else, everything around you feels very difficult. Even in my application processes, there were times when the deadline was so near and my application was nowhere complete. And in those situations, the one thing that kept me going was the fact that I know that I want it for myself. I want to apply there and I want to get into this university because I know this would be the best thing for me. So that drive actually helped me get through those situations. And those situations happen in college because you're on your own. Yes. And there's a lot to manage. So, in those situations, this actually helps you. And if you have a subject that you do not like, it's going to be all the more difficult for you.
That is true.
Talking about resilience, confusion, and seriousness, one of the most important questions that intrigues me is that choosing a college abroad is a very difficult choice as per a student's aspect. So, why should one choose to study abroad, and what are its advantages and disadvantages?
Okay. So, to answer the first question, why should one study abroad? One should study abroad only if the person thinks that is the best option, that is the best thing for them. There's no perfect career trajectory. There's no perfect study trajectory that you must follow in order to be somewhere. If you feel you're prepared enough, if you feel that the opportunities you'd get outside are worth all the sacrifice you're going to make in terms of your family life, in terms of the monetary financial expenses, in terms of all the other pressure and all the other work and effort it's going to take you, not just in terms of getting through the application process, but even once you get there, because life there is very different from life as we know in India. So only then should you apply or should you consider to study abroad. There are of course a lot of opportunities you get when you choose colleges that are top tier and prestigious in terms of best teachers, in terms of their brand value, of course. So anywhere that I tell that I am a student at University of Oxford, I am going to be taken seriously. So you get those things, but the most important thing is if you feel that the teaching learning system there, the kind of mentorship you'll get there is something that your study style and your experiences align with, because that is what those universities are actually also looking for in you. So when you make your application to these universities, you're trying to tell them that I have done this much in my life till now, and I think that this would be the next best step in my life now because of the following reasons. And because of the following reasons, I feel I'm prepared to study at you, and this is how I will contribute to your institution. And if all of that is convincing, if you are firstly convinced by all of that, will you be able to convince the other person about this? And if all of that is convincing and if all of that is well-rounded, do the university select you? So knowing why is it that you want to do, I always emphasize you might have heard this, that you should find your calling, you should find your purpose in life. Purpose seems a very daunting word, right? You cannot suddenly have that dream and you would know that, okay, this is my purpose in life, this is what I should do. So the step that you can take towards ensuring that what you're doing is actually worthwhile and is important to you is to start by learning the little whys of what you're doing. So why you chose your stream, why is it that you chose NCC, why is it that you continued those 2 years, because NCC breaks you a lot of times. It makes you question a lot of times if you should even continue, if you should even do this camp, if you should get through the examinations, or if you should just focus on your studies. So what is it that propelled you towards completing NCC successfully? So just learning those whys help you a lot, and that would help in study abroad as well, because it's not something it's of course shown very glamorous, but if it does not benefit you, or if it does not enrich your life, your learning and your knowledge, it is not going to be that good an experience for you, and it's not going to take you anywhere.
So it's all about experiences and what you learn from them.
Similarly, like this leads me to think that Indian education system is like mostly grade based and is theoretical, whereas this is very contrasting to Western countries where it is more practical and it is more skill based. So what is your approach on this? What do you think that foreign education systems have differences with our country, and do these grades are like Indian merits and grades, do they help us to go abroad, and like in what way?
Okay, so a lot of questions.
You can summarize.
Yeah, I will begin by answering the differences between the two countries and between all the countries and Indian education system. So yes, we are a little theoretical and we are focused a little on grades.
Yes.
But with NEP, because I've not been in the NEP system till now, I was the pre-NEP batch, so I've not been able to experience the changes that have come up after NEP, right, in experiences of students. But I would like to believe that not just theoretical knowledge and not just grades, but the schools, for example, take your school for instance, the amount of emphasis we have on extracurricular activities, the amount of interest and the amount of attention, our oratory skills, our competitions, sports, and everything is paid in our school, that actually equips you and takes you a lot far. It is not just grades for us in our experience. I'm sure you would relate as well.
Yeah.
So that is how we sort of try to make it an all-round experience for ourselves. So if there's a systemic lag in terms of there's too much emphasis on grades from CBSE or from everywhere around, schools or institutions try to bring extracurriculars into focus by themselves. This is a very well-known fact that a lot of Indians have been doing very well abroad.
Yes.
Not just in terms of jobs, but also in colleges and universities. The amount of Indian diaspora we have there doing masters or undergrad courses is a lot when compared to other countries. So it might be a systemic lag, but then something is also being done right in ensuring that people are made capable into cracking that system. So that could be their own individual efforts, or they could be an institution's efforts. All right. The one thing that I think West does better than India is that they focus a lot more on what you want to do. So for example, when I was making my application to University of Oxford, I could talk about what my research interest is and what I want to do in it. So my application was less focused on the course and the modules that I'd be offered by the university, but more focused on the kind of mentorship I would get from the professors there, and what I would make use of as a student or as a prospective candidate in that university. So that is something that is different and that we can probably incorporate in our systems. And secondly, as a humanities student, I cannot help but say it, we should give more importance to humanities subjects, and also provide opportunities to students, because fields like international relations and international politics, they might seem a very elite thing, but you can begin experiencing and you can begin learning, and you can learn of a way of getting into these fields and engaging with them from your college level as well. So it took me quite a lot of figuring out to find internships and competitions at embassies, but it was not impossible. So if that is also supported by institutions, I think that would be very helpful for students as well. What was the second part of the question?
Is like this merit, how is it impacting our like global opportunities, these merits and marks we get? Not
Okay,
just credit
yes.
for
So a
this.
lot of countries actually have been very accepting of Indian grades and the marks you get. For example, UK, you do not have to sit in a standardized test if you're applying to UK for your undergrad. So your CBSE scores are valid there. Similarly, for my course, I did not have to sit for a GRE GMAT examination. My college scores, my college CGPA was valid in my university. So there's a lot of acceptance, global acceptance that we have. They have their own metric system and tables where they ensure that this amount of grade is going to be equivalent to this grade of our system. But there's a lot of equivalence factors and a lot of things that are in place already that help a lot. So it's not something that you should be scared of or be too much worried about now.
That was actually unknown to us.
It was unknown to me as well, but when I applied to these universities, I got to know, especially CBSE scores being valid in UK, I did not know that.
Yeah. Okay, so you talked about so many questions that we have ourselves when you are applying to colleges and writing applications. We question ourselves, we question a lot of things. So another question and the most common obstacle that we face is why should we accept you? How did you tackle this question, and what relevance do factors like interviews, applications and portfolios hold?
So the application process, especially to UK universities, are very well rounded. So there are a lot of components to your application, and all of them are equally important, and all of them have equal weightage. So do not be in that idea that one part of my application would have more emphasis, would have more importance than the rest of them. All parts of your application are equally important to them. So be it your grades, be it your interview, be it your academic transcripts, be it your recommendations that your teachers are writing you, and be it your personal statement and research proposal. These are the components of my application to Oxford, by the way. All of them are equally important. So if your academic records are stellar, but if you are not able to communicate well your passion and why you want to study a subject, or why is it that you want to do a particular course and what you're going to make out of it for yourself in your personal statement, the entire exercise is going to be fruitless for you. So when you're supposed to answer how and why we should accept you to our university, you're supposed to show to that university and to the application committee that you have till now made the best out of the opportunities and the exposure you had as a student, wherever you were in school or in college. And from that experience gained, you are able to also bring all of that together, and you're able to make a trajectory that is going to be beneficial for the department and for you as an individual and as a researcher. So universities, especially in UK, are very research focused. So if you're applying for graduate courses, masters, PhD, DPhil is what they call it there, you'll have to have that research focus, research inclination in yourself. So you should have that relevant experience and a little bit of knowledge of research skills as well. If your universities do not give you that much of exposure as an undergrad student, as was the case with us, because research in India especially is a post-grad thing. So graduation students who are just doing their undergrad are not given so much of exposure in terms of research and research skills. We do not make a dissertation as part of our curriculum, which was during our time, the pre-NEP batch. But you need to ensure that you do relevant internships, you work with similar organizations that align with your work and with your research interest, that you're able to bring all of that together into showing them that you are a well-rounded person and that you can take the experiences you have till now further by gaining the experiences and the knowledge that the university has to offer. So when you're making an application, all aspects of the application are equally important, and all of them play a role into showing the university how you are as an individual and how you are as their prospective candidate and as an addition to their prospective class.
So apart from your senior suggesting that you could crack into Oxford, what else made you focus on the University of Oxford as it is?
So like I said, I had an eye out for the top universities as soon as I did my 12th. While I was in college, I frequently came across the write-ups and research that was done by the professors in Oxford University. So a lot of books that we were reading, a lot of articles we read during that were a part of our curriculum actually, was scholarship from professors of that university. So that is how my interaction with University of Oxford increased to a point that I started researching those departments that the university had more deeply, and then I found out some professors whose research interest was intersectional and was similar to what I was interested in doing as a master's student. And I also thought that after Miranda House, the next best step would be education abroad, because like I mentioned, I am interested in international relations, so I could sit back and prepare for UPSC and try to enter into Indian Foreign Services, but I felt that I needed that global exposure in myself first in order to see what it's like, and in order to also judge if I am apt for it and if that is the field for me. So for that, the next best step also seemed to be University of Oxford. So a lot of factors actually played out into me finally deciding upon the University of Oxford, and I'm so grateful that I finally got the opportunity, and I hope that I'm able to make use of it the best way I can.
Seems like this decision was whole planned out, and I'm just so happy that you got into after so much thought and process. But I was really confused about how to get into Oxford, and also being a student of class 11th, I have like little to no information about scholarships at bachelor's or at master's level, and I'm pretty sure most of the people who are even watching this would be unaware and curious. So can you tell us about scholarships, their application process, and also when do you actually apply for them?
So, like you mentioned that you are an 11th student. So,
Yes.
if you are considering applying to the UK for your undergrad, which is for your bachelor's, you'd have a different way and a different method of applying than postgraduate students. The process that I went through was the graduate route. So, it is a little different from what the undergrads have to go through. The main difference being that you need to not focus so much on colleges. You give a preference list for your colleges when you're applying for your undergrad. You tell them that this is the course that I'm interested in, and these are the universities in order of preference. Now, whichever university matching your preference list accepts you is the university you get in for your undergrad. For your graduate route, you are supposed to apply to a specific university for a specific course. That is how it is different. Alright. The scholarship process is in most cases different to the graduate route that you use for applying to
You got
universities.
that Commonwealth scholarship and
Yes.
all. So you can also tell us about that. How
Yes.
you got that also.
Yes. So the university that you're applying to, they would be offering a lot of scholarships on their own, which would be an intra system. So you make an application, and through that you also make a combined application for those scholarships. So it is on the admission committee that they consider your application apt for that scholarship or not. So that is not a very open process, and that is not not a very reliable process as well, because as an outsider you do not know if you make it to that list or that nominated list of candidates for even being considerate for that scholarship, right? The outside or the outsourced scholarship funding opportunities include the Rhodes Scholarship, Commonwealth Scholarship, and for that the application process is very different. So you need to apply to these scholarship agencies, and their application process is very separate from those of the universities. So one basic thing that you should know as a prospective applicant is that your application process would begin 1 year before you intend to start your course at a university. And similarly, your scholarship applications, the ones that you are eligible for and the ones that you should apply for, that process also begins a year before you are supposed to start your study. So, and in most cases, scholarships, the deadlines for the scholarships are way before the deadlines of your studies, of your applications to the universities. So in that sense, you need to be prepared, and you need to start working on your scholarship applications a little prior than you start to work on your university applications. For example, the university deadline that I had for Oxford was in January, while my scholarship deadline was way back in September. So I had to have a clear idea of my university, the course I'm applying to, what I'm going to do, and the statement of purpose, and the prospective research supervision I was looking for, and everything while I was maintaining and while I was preparing that scholarship application. So I had to be prepared a little far in advance and prepared in that way to crack the scholarship process. What happens in most cases is that people, once they crack the university application process, is when they start considering scholarship options once they've gotten admissions. But that actually lessens your chances, because then a lot of scholarships, the deadlines are already crossed, and a lot of options that you could have had earlier are no more available to you. So to do away with that disadvantage, the first thing that is also suggested by a lot of people who have studied abroad is that you should firstly start by listing down the scholarships you're eligible for way before you start planning on which university and which course you need to apply for. However, because my Commonwealth scholarship was actually also linked to my university, because a part of my scholarship is also paid by University of Oxford, I had to be clear of both the things. But for other scholarships, you could make an open application to the commission and figure out everything else about your admission later on in the process. The Commonwealth scholarship had two stages actually. In which the number one stage was that I submit an application to the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission and to the Sakshat portal that the Government of India has. And that application consisted of a lot of components that are also common to your university applications, like you have to submit a statement of purpose, transcripts, recommendations from your professors. You also have to submit a research proposal, a research sample to show how good you are in your research and the skills you have in research. And in recommendations, there was one unique thing apart from what is the system like for universities, and that was that you need to have a personal recommendation. So somebody who has known you as a person closely, it does not have to be a relative or a family person, but it has to be somebody who has seen you closely, or somebody who you have worked with, but not in a professional capacity. So that person gives a perspective into how you are as an individual, and that makes your application a little more well-rounded, in the sense that you do not just talk about your academic achievements, but you also show them how you are as a person. So a Commonwealth scholarship is basically funding that is given to students from Commonwealth countries so that they can help and aid in development of their own country. So apart from them completing their studies well and making the most out of the opportunities that are there in the UK, they want us to come back to our country and to use that knowledge into developing projects and into making sure that our country is developing on whichever development theme that we are working on. So Commonwealth Scholarship Commission is in a way closely aligned to the ideas that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals have. So that is how the application process is different. I just gave you a little insight into what it's like to apply for the Commonwealth scholarship that I applied for. Similarly, all the scholarships that you apply for would have a different way of judging you and assessing you, how you are as an individual, but they'll also have different objectives. So for example, Commonwealth needs me to come back to my country and to make sure that I use my knowledge that I gained in my masters at University of Oxford into my country's development. So these organizations that you apply for outside of your university will have different asks as well. So the good thing to ensure that you crack the scholarship process is to be firstly very aware of what is being asked, and into also ensuring that you match the requirements basically. So I had also worked in a lot of social outreach projects.
Yes,
I was the United Nations Millennium Fellowship last year. So I was
that India UK one. We have talked about it.
Yeah, so in that I was able to also develop my project, my own individual project that is aligned with SDGs. So I got an idea from there that okay, this is how projects are supposed to be made, and I also researched quite a lot on SDGs. So that also sort of laid the base for me when I was applying for the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission. So a lot of preparation that you do a little advanced than when you enter your application process is going to help you a lot.
Yeah, that was so innovative, and really interesting to know. We had no knowledge about it, to be honest.
So are you planning to come back to India after fulfilling?
I am considering a lot of options right now actually. So I'm also inclined a little bit towards academia, and I also, as part of my scholarship, have to come back to India at some point. So I am still figuring all of that out. I think things will be clear once I get there and once I
Yes,
complete
definitely.
my course. Yes.
So, as we talked about, like you're still planning to go abroad and first like live there once, start your journey, and then get into knowing what you will do afterwards. But the one thing that comes to my mind is that how did you convince your parents? Indian parents are usually they contemplate over tiny things like sending their kid to like another state or city to even further studies and all. So how was your situation with your parents? How did you convince them?
I get that. With the fact that, even as humanities kids, I think you both would relate to this. The fact that our parents let us choose our subjects of choice, humanities,
Yes.
that actually rings a bell, and it actually makes us ponder upon the fact that we are privileged in a way or the other. Because a lot of people are not even given that option. A lot of my friends who wanted to pursue humanities had to pursue PMC. A lot of my relatives, even after me being through the entire thing, Miranda House, University of Oxford, I'm still the only person in my entire family, extended family, who has studied humanities.
That is relatable.
Right? So that happens, and in that sense, I think I would have to thank God for giving me that privilege, in the sense also that my parents have been very supportive and lenient towards me since the beginning. So me choosing a stream was never a question or a part of discussion in the house. It was, what do you want to choose? Go ahead with it. I still, there was a person who came to our house one day to congratulate us, a family friend, and that person actually told my parents that when they got to know that I had chosen humanities, they were a little disappointed because I was a school topper and everything. So they were a little disappointed with my decision. But now that I've gotten into Oxford, they are thinking otherwise. I mean, they're a little more convinced by my decision. Little more, not entirely still. So they told me that, and after they went away, I remember talking to my father. I asked him, why is it, and how did you actually, how were you so okay with me
Accepted,
choosing
yeah.
humanities? Did you not think on it? Did you not, did mom and you have a conversation on it? What was it like? He did not answer that. I need to get an answer out of him eventually. But I have been fortunate and a little privileged in that sense that I was supported in my decision of choosing humanities and then going to Miranda House. It of course was a little more difficult for me because I'm a single child of my parents and we're a nuclear family.
Now I
So-
can relate with that.
That's great. So sending me outside of the city when I was going to Miranda House, even that was a little difficult decision for my parents. And it was for me as well because I did not want to leave my parents and go there.
Your mother even mentioned how she was a little emotional about
Emotional,
sending you
yeah.
to another country.
She is. Both my parents are emotional right now,
So how
and
do they react to this fact that you will be leaving to another
Yeah.
continent in a while?
so you need to have good convincing skills, I think. Because when I remember when I mentioned this for the first time to my parents that I am considering going to Delhi University for my graduation, they told me, BHU hai, so why do you want to go outside?
This is
They
every
didn't,
parent here.
yeah, they didn't say that, don't go outside. They didn't tell me that, you should stay here only. They just, asked me, why is it that you want to go?
Exactly.
Right? So
That
it took me
happens.
some time, some crying matches into convincing my parents that, it is a good thing for me and I want to go there. But then I was also very resolute on this that I will go to Delhi University only if I make it to Miranda House for my course. So I'm not going to Delhi University for another course, and I'm not going to do my graduation in political science in another college. Similarly, it was for Oxford. I will go to university, I will go to UK only if I make it to Oxford, and if I make it with full funding. So that decision was always there. So that was our little, agreement between me and my parents that, okay, we are going to allow you to do that, but you will also have to ensure that you give us this, that you ensure your safety, that, I chose an all-girls college. Miranda House is an all-girls
Yeah.
college. It was an active decision on my part. I did not want a co-ed experience in Delhi. So these are the things that I did to ensure that my parents are convinced with my decision, and that they support me in it. And the fact that you have been given that much support and that you're allowed to do what you want to do also propels you in a way. That I always knew in Delhi that the sacrifices I'm making in order to stay at this institution, and in order to ensure that I'm getting all the opportunities and exposure I'm getting right now, has to amount less than what I'm gaining out of it. So bunking classes, or missing events, important things for fun or for college fest and all, was never even a question for me, because I knew what I was sacrificing in order to just stay in that class right at that moment. I think that also positively propels you. But yes, for parents, you need to have convincing skills, and you also need to understand that once you're deciding, or once you're telling yourself that you want to apply abroad, you face a lot of barriers, including your own mental barrier, that makes you think, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I'll not be able to make it. Why do I waste so much of my time and energy into completing this application process, when the chances of me getting into the university is less than 5%? So you get those questions. But you need to also realize that you have had probably weeks, if not months, of thinking that decision through, into convincing yourself that okay, you can apply. And when you're breaking that news to your parents, you're only giving them a moment to reply in yes or no. So you need to give them that margin, that flexibility to also think their way, and to discuss with them, and to finally come up on a decision together. So I think that is also very important. That is something that I realized while I was doing this, because a lot of times this happened when I would talk to my parents. They would be, of course, supportive in the end, but when I would break that news to them, they would be a little stringent in that moment. So that actually made me think a lot on this. So this is actually true, that you need to give them a little bit of margin as well, because you have had a lot of weeks to think that decision through and into convincing yourself. You need to give them that a little more amount of time than just a moment or just a few hours into them finally deciding on to what you should be doing next, or what should the next step be.
So convincing your parents to go to Delhi made it easier for you to convince them to go to Oxford.
I think that actually makes your life a little easier, because I also knew that I've accustomed myself into adjusting with the surroundings, and I'd be able to survive in a foreign setting. So that helped me actually, and that also gave my parents this assurance that okay, my girl would be able to manage and survive on her own. So had you imagine this happening when I just completed my 12th, even I did not see myself going straight from my home to an institution abroad. So that would have been a way more difficult decision for me as well as my parents then. So it takes a lot of preparation in terms of your how you're brought up and how the experiences you're putting yourself through, and a lot of mental preparation to finally be ready for a new thing in life. So it works both ways, and a lot of times you've got to prove it to your parents and show it to them that these are the ways that I will make use of the opportunities, and these are the reasons that you could trust me, and that I tell you in full faith that I will do well, just as I had been doing previous. So your previous experiences actually play a lot of role into making your future and making your life easier. It works as well with your parents. So
Talking about survival, switching states and switching cities is far different from changing continents and countries. And many students who study abroad have actually complained about the cultural shock and the academic shock that they have to face. So how are you planning to deal with it and survive over there?
I think that's very true, and I'm a little worried myself about how life would be once I go there. But I think being in Varanasi, I have learned to enjoy and appreciate culture a lot. So heterogeneity always is something very important, interesting, and fascinating to me. So if I am in a group of people in which somebody is from a different state, I would love to strike a conversation with them and to learn how their experience has been, and if it is different from me in whichever way. When I was in Miranda House, we have a lot of students from southern states of India. So I actually took classes with them into teaching them Hindi. And they would teach me a few words of their language. So we did these things. And in top universities, this happens actually, that you get people from a lot of different cultures. So all the events we would have 4 or 5 different presentations of different dance forms. We would have different accents being spoken in the same place. So it all really makes your experience all the more enriching, is what I feel. So stepping out from my country into another country and into an entirely different academic experience, I think I want actually to be a more enriching experience for me than it has been just being in a community of people with different states. So I am hoping to learn a lot from people from different countries and from different experiences that people might have. And in terms of preparing myself for the academic shock that there is, I think a lot of preparation on my part is required into getting a little ahead into what is being taught, doing my readings well, and into ensuring that I'm a good participative student in class. So a lot of things are to be done on your part as well, into ensuring that the transition is smooth for you. But I hope the transition is enriching and a good one.
Definitely. And we wish you a best of luck for your journey ahead. And it was a thrilling experience. We got to learn so much, and a lot was unknown by us. And looking up to you as our inspiration and as our senior and walking on the same path as you is actually a pride to us. And thank you so much for being a part of this interview and coming with us and having this fruitful session.
And we are hoping that you had a great time here and like walking through the same walls, the bonding
Corridor.
memories, and the experience you've shared is definitely very enriching and knowledgeable to us as well as the audience which will be watching this. And it was such a great time. I
Thank you
hope
so
you
much.
had that time as well.
Absolutely. I'm just trying to pass on the legacy. When I was a student, there was a Sunny Bhaiya for me, there was a Sakhi Di for me, there was an Aishwarya Didi for me who helped me, get out of my dilemmas and confusions. So I just hope I'm able to benefit you in whichever way I can. And it was delightful talking to both of you. And of course, coming back to school is always like coming back to home. So I'm grateful for the experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.